皆さんおはようございます。バラトです。今日のトピックは中間の戦略です。Hello everyone and welcome back. Today I want to discuss some prosecution strategies, mainly regarding avoiding final office actions. And last week I taught a seminar at the JPAA. It's called PADIAS, and I put a link in the description below to the website for that course. But it's a course I've taught several times at the JPAA, among other courses. And I just want to say thank you to JPAA for allowing me to teach the seminar there last week. And during the seminar, there was a good question regarding rewriting claims into independent form and to avoid final office actions, and I didn't have enough time to fully answer it. So I'm going to take some time now and I'm going to go through final office action, the rule for final office actions. It's MPEP 706. And discuss when an action is final, and then at the end of the video I'm going to discuss the strategy about rewriting your claims. So there are basically 3 points that I want to discuss. The first one is when is an office action final. Second one is the consequences of a final office action. And then at the end, avoiding final office actions. How can we avoid them? So the rule regarding when an OA is final, OA is office action, when it's final is MPEP 70607A. And that rule is, there are several paragraphs. In this video I'm going to go over the first paragraph because the first paragraph is the one that is most relevant to the question. But there are about 4 or 5 other paragraphs, and I'm going to cover those paragraphs in the next video. So this is a part 1. The next video will be a part 2 for this. And so this paragraph here, I'm going to read it real quick, and then I'll break it down to kind of a simple form. But basically, it's a second or any subsequent action, so it's your second action or any action after the second one, on the merits shall be final, where the examiner introduces a new ground of rejection. So what is a new ground of rejection? Well, new ground of rejection is defined in another MPEP section. I believe it's 1203. I'm going to cover that in a video later because there are about 10 examples of what are and are not new grounds of rejection. For now, new ground of rejection means if the examiner uses a new prior art or rejects your claim for a different reason. So the examiner uses a different argument to reject your claim. So for now, think about it that way. So the new ground of rejection that is neither necessitated by applicant's amendments to the claims nor based on information submitted in an information disclosure statement. So you got 2 things to remember: amending the claims or an IDS. Just keep that in your mind. So where information is submitted in an information disclosure statement, the examiner may use the information submitted and make the next office action final whether or not the claims have been amended, provided that no other new ground of rejection, which was not necessitated by amendment to the claims, is introduced by the examiner. Okay, that's a lot of words. Let me break it down, okay? Practically, as a practical matter, the basic meaning of this is if the examiner makes a new ground of rejection and you didn't cause it, all right? And there's 2 ways you can cause a new ground of rejection and it's kind of your fault. Number 1, you amend the claims. And then the examiner, so the scope of the claims changes. So it's all about fairness to the examiner and also to you. So if you amend the claim has a different scope, the examiner thinks, oh, this is a new scope of the claims, I have to search again. So the examiner gets another chance. And if they reject the claims again, the new grounds, you're going to have a final office action. But if you don't amend the claims and you just argue against the examiner was wrong, well then the examiner should give you a new non-final office action if they give you a new ground of rejection. So 3 basic things you have to remember here. Number 1, new ground of rejection. Did the examiner make a new rejection? New prior art, new reason for the rejection, and you didn't cause it. So you didn't amend your claims to cause the rejection. or you didn't submit new prior art in an IDS. So for example, the IDS situation is a little more rare. Usually it's the amendment situation that causes the final office action. But for an IDS situation, so you have a non-final office action, and then you submit an IDS with new references, you respond to the non-final office action. Then now the examiner has your response and the new prior art, and then if they use the new prior art to reject your claims, then the next action can be final, because the examiner didn't know about that prior art. And so that's the kind of IDS situation. It doesn't happen as much. If you really want to get into that, I suggest you read the rule a few times. It's not really that complicated. But we're going to focus mainly on number 1 here, amendment. Okay. So, and just as a side note, you can amend your claims and still not get a final office action if the new ground of rejection is not based on your amendments. So for example, you have some spelling errors in your claim, you amend some part of the claim, or you amend other features in the claim, and the examiner ignores that and gives you a new ground with the old features that were originally in your claim. The next action can't be final if the examiner does that. Alright. So what if you get a final office action? Final office actions we can avoid them sometimes, but we can't always avoid them. So you will get final office actions. And what a final office action does is it's called closing prosecution. Closing prosecution basically means prosecution's done, you have limited options now. It's similar to Japan, but the second action is not always final in the United States. So the prosecution's closed, so you have these limited options. Now here's some examples. So it limits your interview options. Your non-final office action, you have a right to an interview. So if you have a non-final office action, the first action comes, you request an interview with the examiner must say yes to that. However, after a final office action, the examiner could say, no, I don't want to interview. And some examiners, I've dealt with this too, some examiners say, no, I never do interviews after final. I just don't do them. So then you're limited to AFCP. AFCP can be useful sometimes, but to do AFCP, your amendments have to be very small, only to an independent claim. I'm going to cover AFCP in another video, but for now, just understand your interview options are limited. So that's one reason why we want to avoid final office actions. And another one is amendments. The kind of amendments you can do after a final office action are limited unless you pay for an RCE. So in this case, you can cancel claims. If you have, let's imagine you have allowed claims and you have 5 allowed claims and 5 rejected claims. You cancel your 5 rejected claims, then your 5 allowed claims, you're fine. You can do that with no RCE. Or if you have an allowable claim, you can take the allowable subject matter, put it in your claims, and then take the allowable subject matter, and if all your claims are allowable, then you don't need an RCE for that. And that factors into rewriting your claims, which I'll talk about later. And then finally, usually you have to pay, the usual situation is you amend the claims, the examiner says, I have to do a new search, so you have to file an RCE. And basically, in my opinion, the RCEs are becoming more of a punishment from the Patent Office because they're increasing the fees. Every year they go up. They have been going up. So now just a first RCE is about $15,000, so it's about, I think it's $1,300 now. And so we want to avoid those costs. And actually I did another video regarding avoiding RCEs earlier on, and if you look in my video list, I'll put a link to it in the description as well if you want to see the no RCE strategy that's related to final office actions. Okay, so moving on. So avoiding final office actions. What's the basic strategy? There's a lot of ways you can avoid final office actions, but I want to give you the strategy you can use the most, and the strategy that I believe is most common, that you can use in most of your cases. If you can traverse the examiner's rejections. Traverse means if you can argue to the examiner that the examiner is wrong. If you believe the rejection is wrong, then do not amend your claims. Argue against the examiner's rejections. If you can traverse rejections, you have a chance to get a new non-final office action. You have a chance to avoid a final office action. And then this is kind of the strategy about rewriting the claims. If you believe the examiner is wrong regarding a rejection of a dependent claim, rewrite that dependent claim into independent form, which that is not an amendment that would trigger a final office action because it's the same scope of the claims. The scope of the claims doesn't change. So you rewrite it into independent form, and then you traverse the rejection of the dependent claim subject matter. If you are successful and the examiner gives you a new ground of rejection in the next action, that next action should not be final. If you want to add new features, add new claims, add new dependent claims, add new independent claims if you can. You're allowed to have 20 total claims and 3 independent claims. I really highly suggest you use that, especially in Japanese cases because the claims in Japanese cases are usually quite broad. And then finally here, if your traversal is successful and the examiner makes a new ground of rejection, so they use new prior art, they reject your claim for a different reason, new argument. If the examiner makes a new ground of rejection of that unamended claim, they can make, if you amend other claims and they reject those, that's fine. That's totally fine. But if you have one unamended claim and that's rejected on a new grounds, the next action cannot be final. Just one claim, just one claim. What prevents the final office action is the new ground of rejection of that unamended or rewritten claim. So good luck, and if there's something in the video that didn't quite make sense to you, I suggest you rewind the video, go back, watch it again. So that's it for today, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video. ありがとうございました。